can't sleep, so I decided to just make a video. I was watching Larry Williams, my YouTube brother, talk about on his small council. I'm catching up, so I was watching episode 4, discussion of The Mountain and the Viper, and they're talking about Sansa, so of course, you know, my Sansa stan ears come out, and they start talking about the differences between what happened in the text and what happened in the books, and it's very interesting to me. And I mentioned that I was going to do videos about the differences between Show Sansa and TV Sansa, and I plan on doing that on a larger scale. But just right now, since I'm full of just sleep and working at, you know, Barnes Nobles all day, I'm just like, let me release my little nerd rage in a slightly spacey, not very cohesive video. So yeah, I love Sansa. Most of the guys on here don't. That's okay, I can accept hearing other opinions. But I guess I wanted to talk about my issues with Show Sansa, because don't get me wrong, I love Sansa. Sophie Turner, I think, has done a very commendable job at playing the role. I think that she loves the character, and I think that's important. She hasn't disappointed me like Jamie's actor has, so far we're good. But my problem is that Show Sansa is fundamentally a weaker character than book Sansa. And this is not a simple case of, it's like not like the books. My problem is that the writers do not seem to care about Sansa enough to adapt her story, her plot, into the show in a way that would be tangible for a television audience. Sansa is a character who should be read. Her storyline works more when you read it, because you get to read her point of view, you hear her thoughts, and therefore you can see her growth. Whether you like it or not, because Sansa is still one of the most hated characters in the fandom, regardless of show, books, whatever. So that's a whole different issue. But in the books, you understand her, and you see her story progress, her life progress. You see the relationships that she builds with people in King's Landing, and how those relationships act as foils for how her own growth is going on, and those are important. And those were cut. Her relationship with the Hound, and I know that Sansa is a controversial ship. This is not about Sansa in the romantic sense. This is about how these two characters and their stories complement each other, and how Sandor's character lends itself to Sansa's growth, because this is about Sansa, and how their relationship helps Sansa grow up. It gives her different perspectives, and just, it gives her something more to do. Her storyline with Davos was condensed into 1 episode, 2 episodes, and that was pretty much it. And this is something that starts off in book 2 and spreads out. Everything about what she does and who she is has been greatly reduced, and it's because her character is not one that's, you know, entertaining in the way that other characters would be. But that is the job of the television show, to adapt her character to something that would be more tangible to that audience. And I feel like when they were bringing up the whole Shay thing, and Shay was going to be Sansa's buddy, I thought, okay, they'll be able to give them those kind of, like, you know, overwritten but character displaying speeches that they give to Marjorie, they give to Littlefinger, they give to Jamie, they give to all these other random characters that aren't anything. They'll give it to their actual POV character, and that did not happen. It just ended up being more angst for Tyrion and Shay, which I don't understand needed to be there, but that's how they wanted to push the whole relationship with them, so that was it. And so Sansa gets shafted once again, and her perspective is again lost. Moments where she gets to shine, or things that would show how she has grown and how she has changed, are reduced. And I understand that she's going to be a hard character for people because she is more passive, and I think that that's kind of the brilliance of her character. A lot of people have been writing about how she's so much better now, that she's like in her Maleficent dress and she's being all diva-licious. But to me, I feel like that, while I appreciate that, that I appreciate Show Sansa, my problem with that is that that's not who Sansa is. Sansa is fundamentally a good person. She's fundamentally someone who wants to be better. Her interaction with Cersei has made her want to become a ruler, but a ruler who people love, not someone who people fear or find intimidating. She wants to be a good person. She's very much a Stark in that way, and I think that by turning her into this kind of seductive manipulator is pushing her into a fantasy trope bubble that I do not fully appreciate or think is necessary for her character growth. Because in fantasy, you have these characters who start off as very innocent, and they will totally be corrupted by the world and become darker, more for women, more seductive characters, and that's what this whole little finger thing is kind of leaning towards. And I think that is a wrong way to go. I think that Sansa's good qualities is that she, in the situation, remains being a fundamentally kind, caring, sweet person who can manipulate people with her emotions, which is what she's been doing. That's the other thing too. People talk about how she's very passive, how she's always weeping. That's part of her playing this role of being a weak, meek lady, so that people will feel protective of her and surround her, which is what the Hound does, which was cut out. This is what Tyrion does in season 2. People gravitate to want to help protect Sansa because of this image that she's giving out, and that's the best way for her to go about unnoticed. If she started making waves and doing things in King's Landing, she has no alliances, and like the Hound can't help her in a serious way. So she has to be this meek, kind of almost pathetic creature, and it's part reality, part playing that role. And she says that within the context of the books, you know, my skin has turned from ivory to porcelain to steel. That courtesy is a woman's armor. Those are her tactics of surviving King's Landing by using her meekness, and that is never explored. She just is made to be meek. There is no insight to her character because that's denied to Sansa's perspective, and that takes away something. Because it's one thing if you just see her being meek. It's another thing if you know that she's being meek on top of dealing with her own stuff as a way of retaining her life as a survival tactic. That's a completely different thing, and while she's still a victim, she at least is taking advantage of that in her own way to help make her seem not a threat to the Lannisters. And that again has been lost. And I guess one other thing that I noticed was kind of weird is just that like also her point of view is often lost, and I think it's in Mockingbird, this was most scripted in how they changed up the scenes in which Sansa and Peter and the Robin situation happens. Because in the books, Sansa is building the castle, Littlefinger comes, he helps build it, she throws snow at him because she's pissed that he brought her here in the first place. Again, they removed that, showing that Sansa does sort of like have passive-aggressive, microaggressional ways of dealing with stuff. Then Robin comes in, he just starts, there's no conversation, there's no moon door love nest, he just starts coming and bashing all this stuff after Peter has kissed her and her saying no and being very visibly shaken by the incident. And she doesn't smack Robin, she takes the doll and she rips it because she's just kind of trembling about it because she's so shocked at what Littlefinger has done. And that's not what happens. It turns into this kind of like violent, almost childish action, where in the books it was a response to something that just happened to her that was on top of being molested by this man who is supposed to be protecting her and is just using her yet again like everybody else. And again, that's not how it was shown. And I think that a good example of this, of Sansa's perspective, was when she was with Lysa and talking about how she was a stupid little girl and Lysa's going all you know, jealous and holding on to her. That was good. That was what Sansa would do. But however, they want to put her into this box that she isn't in. Sansa is a deconstruction of a princess in fantasy. We are finally being shown the perspective of the precious virginal jewel, the thing that in fantasy is so often just a symbol of a prize to be won by the hero, by the villain, whatever. She is given her own voice, her own perspective, and what it is like to be that creature and to have to survive in a space where you are constantly being seen as a commodity, as meat, as your heritage, as your land. And the whole thing is that people keep talking about like Sansa's playing the game, Sansa's playing the game. I think I even use that as a reference too. Sansa does not want to, nor has ever had interest in playing the Game of Thrones. She has just been put into it because other people want to play the game, and she just happens to be one thing that can lead to people having an advantage in one place or another. It has nothing to do with her. She never was like, I want to be queen of the world. Like, she wanted to marry a prince who she thought was nice and end up being a dude, she just wanted to go home. And now her home is destroyed. Right now, she's a drifter trying to survive, and that is her reality, and that is her space. It may not be an enjoyable one, but let's face it, Arya's doing the exact same fucking thing. And I think that a lot of people think because Arya stabs people that somehow she's getting more progress. Up until now, she hasn't done a goddamn thing besides stab people in order to get herself closer to being anywhere. Every time she's gotten close, it's been shut in her face. Same thing as Sansa. Just Sansa is indoors and Arya's outdoors. Just because one's walking out and one's inside doesn't mean that either of them are accomplishing anything of circumstance as of yet. This will change, obviously, but right now both these women are stuck and are doing what they can in spaces that both best complement their skills. And I think that whether it's Arya or Sansa or Daenerys or Cersei, I think what's interesting about Game of Thrones and how it, well, Game of Thrones in terms of George R.R. Martin, not much in terms of the original content, is how it shows why educating women and making them competent is so important, because who's really doing well in the situation? The Tyrells. The Tyrells who let their women be important, who are not caught up in the sort of like stupid sort of conservatism of the rest of Westeros, are the ones who are thriving, and everyone else is getting fucked up. And Sansa, while I like I said, I love Sansa, I think she's a great character, I think she's a character that has a lot of literary value, but it's hard to translate, but again, the effort has not been made, which is very disappointing. And I will get more into this when I do my really in-depth, well-researched video about the differences between TV show Sansa and Show Sansa, because I think that as I've reread the book slowly and rewatched the show slowly, it's very clear to me that they wanted to move Sansa from being a young preteen girl who was wide-eyed and dreamy-eyed into a brat, because there are much more bratty moments with TV Sansa than Show Sansa. And I think that a lot of what Sansa has been reduced to is very upsetting, because again, what was important about her role, was important about Kat's role, was that they were showing perspectives of characters in fantasy that are ignored, ostracized, crapped on, and treated as irrelevant. And while they still are in the Song of Ice and Fire, to be quite frank, they are at least giving a voice. And that voice, that authority, that autonomy has been taken away by the show, which is why Kat Stark is probably one of the most tragic characters in the translation, because everything that was important about Kat and showed Kat's savvy, her intelligence, everything just gone. And Sansa, it seems to be like, because people did not accept her within the box that she was assigned, because they want her to be something that she's not, and people who want Sansa to be that seductive, conniving person, to me, they're mistaken. She's not that person. She can be manipulative, but not in that cruel way that Littlefinger is or that Cersei is. She knows how to manipulate in the emotional sense. She knows how to navigate amongst people and be politically savvy in the sense of getting people to like her and be endearing, but she is not Littlefinger. She's not Marjorie Tyrell. She doesn't have the education for that. She's learned to see the world through non-rose-colored lenses, which is her arc. That's her storyline of being basically Ariel and realizing that that's not real, and learning to deal with that in a situation where everyone's against you. You have no way of guaranteeing the situation because you were never taught how, having to learn on your feet to survive. And she has survived. And that's an accomplishment within itself, whether it's fulfilling to people or not. And I think that as the show progresses, especially now it's going on to things that were not in the books because they are going faster than George R.R. Martin can write the material, it'll be interesting to see if they decide to either put Sansa on the route of being a trope or continue her deconstructive purpose, because I think that will really show to me if the writers really like Sansa for who she is or who they want her to be. And I think that until the show takes the time to have Sansa scenes be about Sansa and to actually care about her point of view in the scenarios that are about her, that's never going to happen.